Oh, I'm up.
Buenos días y bienvenidos. Good morning and welcome. It is a beautiful day at Cedar Lane, a liberal religious community where love works.
And I am Tim Atkins, your Director of Lifespan Religious Education. Some of us are bringing our best selves to this space, and some of us are bringing our struggling selves. All of us are welcome here, and all of us are loved.
Please know that whoever you are, wherever you're from, whomever you love, whatever your sexual orientation or gender identity, wherever you are on life's journey, and whatever your beliefs, life circumstance, or immigration status, you are welcome here.
A special welcome to those joining our service online, whether in the moment or catching us later. We're happy to have you here with us.
If you're new to Cedar Lane, we have a gift for you, so please raise your hand if you're comfortable doing so, and keep it raised for a moment so that our ushers can find you. Know that all are invited to stay after the service to enjoy coffee and conversation. And visitors, if you choose to use a yellow mug, know that our members and friends will be sure to greet you, because at Cedar Lane, yellow means hello.
In a moment, we will turn and greet one another. But before we do so, I draw your attention to the announcement page included as an insert in your order of celebration. Here are a few of the highlights. Everyone is invited to meet with Reverend Ahbi in the chapel at 12:30. The agenda is open and flexible to create an opportunity to dialogue about questions of intimate and ultimate concern. And I am beyond pleased to introduce Tiffany Lewis, our new youth coordinator. Tiffany, would you stand? Thank you. Tiffany is a native of Jamaica, but spent the majority of her life in New York City, and is a speech and hearing pathology graduate student at the University of Maryland. Her aim is to develop young leaders as well as create meaningful and seasoned event experiences. We invite you to say hello to her following the service in the library.
We're going to need some help today loading food into vans to transport it to the Mana Food Center. So if you're available after service, your help would be greatly appreciated.
You can join Reverend Ahbi and Interfaith Clergy at an Interfaith Thanksgiving service on Tuesday, November 21st at 7:30 p.m. at the Church of Latter-day Saints in Potomac. Price of admission is one non-perishable food item to support Mana's Thanksgiving Drive.
The Interfaith Works Women's Shelter is a 65-bed facility that provides meals and shelter to homeless women of Montgomery County. In addition, the new facility provides medical, dental, and behavioral health services, as well as vocational assistance. Cedar Lane's Week at the Shelter runs Sunday, November 26th through December 2nd. Volunteers are needed to cook and serve meals, to assemble lunch bags, and purchase pantry items. You can sign up in the lounge after services or through the direct website links located in the November and weekly e-newsletter. Our lay pastoral visitors work closely with the ministers to support the pastoral ministry of our congregation. I'd like to invite the pastoral visitors who are present to rise in body or spirit. Betsy Binks, Ann Meyer, Bob Harrison, Cheryl Zaki, Janelle Stewart, Kathleen Holme, and Helen Pachakek, who is also chair of the We Care program. Phil Smith and Tim Persons as well are a part of the team. Helen will be at the Joys and Sorrows candles up until the chalice lighting today, and Helen will be available in the library if you have any pastoral concerns today. Today's Give the Plate offering is to support Puerto Rico for the Hurricane Maria Recovery Fund. Please give generously to this fund. 100% of today's plate will go to an organization that was recommended by the Unitarian Universalist Association. It's the mariafund.org. And it is a grassroots organization that is supporting already established Puerto Rican organizations, and that's really important. Electricity is only at 41%. 1 in 5 people are still lacking clean water, and it's been almost 2 months after this catastrophic storm. I also would like to highlight that the Transgender Remembrance Service today from 4 to 6 p.m. will be at 101 Monroe in downtown Rockville. Please greet your neighbor. Let us turn our hearts and minds to the service. Breathe in.
Breathe out.
Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Let us turn our hearts and minds to the service with the prelude.
Thank you guys. You were awesome.
On the day when the weight deadens on your shoulders and you stumble, may the clay dance to balance you.
And when your eyes freeze behind the gray window and the ghost of loss gets into you, may a flock of colors, indigo, red, green, and azure blue, come to awaken in you a meadow of delight.
When the canvas sprays in the currach of thought and the stain of ocean blackens beneath you, may there come across the waters a path of yellow moonlight to safely bring you home.
May the nourishment of the earth be yours. May the clarity of light be yours. May the fluency of the ocean be yours. May the protection of the ancestors be yours.
And so may a slow wind work these words of love around you, an invisible cloak to mind your life. Come, let us worship together.
the music and you can eat.
As Mala Wedberg comes forward to kindle the chalice, symbol of our faith and gathered community, please rise in body and or in spirit. This is a responsive reading. If you'd read the lines in italics, please, and then repeat the last line after me. We have all been wounded by life.
In our pain, we kindle the flame of healing.
We have all experienced awe and wonder.
In our joy, we kindle the flame of celebration.
We have all had visions of a better world.
In our hope, we kindle the flame of justice and peace.
We have all been blessed by the fruits of the earth.
In our gratitude, we kindle our chalice of thanksgiving.
Please remain as you are to sing Gather the Spirit, number 347 in your gray hymnal.
Lee was having a no good, very bad day. He could feel his heart slowly deflating after each and every horrible, terrible thing that went wrong. So first, he broke his glasses while he was trying to clean them. They snapped right in the middle where they rested on his nose. His mom had to try to super glue them together. It was so embarrassing, and he was just angry they couldn't get another pair. He was so angry he felt his heart deflate some. And it was so cold outside, he couldn't go play. He hated when it got cold because he liked to run and play tag with his friends. Now, sometimes, if it was cold, he could play outside in the snow. But this was the worst kind of cold, the cold without snow. He was so angry, he felt his heart deflate a little bit more. So since he couldn't play outside, he decided to play with his pet cat. They were playing chase the feathers with the long feather stick thing, and he was having a pretty good time. Eventually, he went down to pet his cat, and it scratched him. He was so angry, he felt his heart deflate a little more. And all day long, bad things kept happening. And by the end of the day, his heart felt totally deflated and completely empty. He hoped that tomorrow would be better, but he wasn't holding out too much hope. Well, that night, he had the strangest dream, and when he woke up, all he remembered was a voice telling him that he was going to have a chance to redo the day. Now, he was excited because he hoped he could turn this horrible, terrible day into something wonderful. But he also remembered this voice saying, "Be thankful." Now, can you say that with me? Be thankful. You guys need to remember that part, okay? So his day started off the same, and although he tried not to, he still broke his glasses right in the middle. But he remembered what the voice said in his dream, and he decided to try and not get so angry. When his mom came to fix him with super glue again, he said, "Thank you, Mom." And he noticed how his mom gave him a relieved smile in return. Because what Lee didn't know was that his mom was worried how she was going to pay the bills that month and didn't know how they would be able to afford a new pair of glasses. So when he said thanks, his heart began to inflate. And when he wasn't allowed outside and he had to stay inside, he remembered the voice saying, "Be thankful." And so he said thanks for having a house to stay in when it was so cold outside. He knew not everyone had a warm place to be on a cold day. And so when he said thanks, his heart inflated a little bit more. And when he started to play with his cat, he could tell that she got really excited. And so when he went down to pet her, okay, he still got scratched. But he remembered the voice that said, "Be thankful." And so this time, he knew it was because she was still excited and wanted to keep playing. "Thank you, kitty," he said, "for playing with me." When he said thanks, his heart inflated just a little bit more. So all day long, the same bad things happened. But this time, he found a way to say thanks. And by the end of the day, his heart felt full. Every time you say thanks to someone, your heart swells just a little bit more. Saying thanks is like breathing life into your heart and soul. So let's try saying thank you together. On the count of 3, let's all say thank you. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Now, did you feel your heart swell just a little bit? I'll assume the answer is yes. So now I want you to think of something bad that happened to you this week. Can you think of something bad that happened? I know I can. Did you have it in mind? All right. So now I want you to think of something, anything, that you could have been thankful for during that time that you had something bad happen. So think of something you could be thankful for. Now, on the count of 3, let's say thank you again. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Did you feel your heart swell just a little bit more? And finally, on the count of 3, and the kids loved this in the first service, I want you to shout as loud as you can. Now, folks with sensitive ears, you may want to prep yourself in advance, okay? Because I think this is a loud group too. So on the count of 3, I want you to shout thank you as loud as you can. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. My heart is so full, it feels like it could pop right now out of my chest. May all of us remember to say thank you and breathe the love of gratitude into our hearts.
Thank you, Tim. Let us now sing our children out to religious education classes. You may remain seated.
Spirit, that dwells with you now. As you go forth from this space, hold it in your heart. Of knowledge and hope to seek, your teachers will guide. Use the wisdom that they share to make a better world.
Each time we gather for worship, we set aside time to expand the caring ministry of this congregation. Together, we recognize the cycle of life and death, the circle of love, compassion, and witness that is at the heart of this religious community. Our hearts are with those whose primary spiritual practice is the raising of children. We hold in our circle of caring those who live with grief or chronic pain, with illnesses seen and unseen, with mental illness or addictions, and who care for family members in ill health. And we now name Marianne Dillon has gone to New York to be with her sister-in-law Diane, who has entered hospice. She asks for your prayers so that Diane's passing is peaceful, and also continued prayers for her brother Dan, who is recovering from his own health crisis. Cards and letters to Marianne's home are welcome. John Giovanelli is back at Carriage Hill recovering from a fall. Cards and letters are appreciated. We hold in our hearts and grieve the more than 500 lives lost and the many hundreds who were injured in an earthquake along the Iran-Iraq border last Sunday. We also hold in our hearts the more than 330 lives lost all over the world this year to transphobic violence. We mourn the deaths of 5 people in yet another mass shooting in Northern California last Monday. May these friends of ours, our companions in the world, and all that lives unspoken in our hearts, be held in the embrace of prayer and silence.
Let us center ourselves for a time, inviting our mind, body, and spirit into the space made sacred by our presence and the presence of the holy in which we live, move, breathe, and have our being. And as we gather our hearts and spirits into that deep place of silence and honesty, courage and compassion, hope and love, and settle in. May we continue to hold and send healing thoughts to John Giovanelli and Mary Stewart. May we remember Marianne Dillon as she companions her beloved sister-in-law Diane and brother Damon, holding them in light and love. Let us remember the many lives lost in the devastating earthquake in Iran and Iraq, the 5 lives lost in yet another mass shooting in Northern California, and the more than 330 lives lost this year to transphobic violence. People who are afraid, loved ones who are afraid. May we hold them all in our thoughts and prayers with these words. O nameless one of many names, in this season of thanksgiving, we come with praise and thanks, despite the pain and the sorrow that we face and hold. We give thanks for all that we have and are. We give thanks for every gift of life which we have received. We give thanks for our families and friends, for the blessings of love in our lives, and for the chance we have to love again and again. We give thanks to our liberal religious faith that sustains, supports, and challenges, and calls us to live compassionate, generous, and hospitable lives. We give thanks to this, our spiritual home that nurtures and supports us. We give thanks that we are not called to make life and death decisions in morally equivocal circumstances. With a thankful spirit, we muster the courage and resolve to overcome our own fears and open our hearts and lives to one another. With hope and love and companionship to carry us through the many causes of disappointments, we seek to journey over those rough places where we cannot yet be thankful, with the hope that our lives might be filled not with despair and loneliness, but with the possibility of grace and life. O Spirit, help us live up to the most basic values and convictions of our faith and our nation by choosing the blessed path of hospitality. May we be persuaded to find new ways to house the homeless, to feed the hungry, to welcome the stranger, and not succumb to a gospel of apathy and self-absorption. And may we be about our work for restoration and renewal to aid in creating a world made whole. Spirit of life, abundance, and thanksgiving, hear our praise and thanks. We offer ourselves to be used by life. We offer ourselves as a prayer. We offer our whole selves. In the silence that follows, agree or disagree, consent or contend, but praise something. Offer your gratitude. Choose abundance. Lift eyes to the sky or to each other and praise. During the silence, I invite those grieving the loss of a loved one or commemorating an anniversary or remembering the loss of so many lives on this transgender day of remembrance to please rise in body and or in spirit. Let us enter the silence together. Shanti, Shanti. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Let there be peace in the heart Let there be peace in the community. Let there be peace in the universe. So may it be. Blessed be. We offer our grateful thanks to our choir, Henry Zagrishi, Jasmine Lee, our children and youth choirs for the wonderful music ministry. Thank you. I am delighted to welcome once again my dear friend, Gini Von Corder, to our pulpit this morning. Gini served as our moderator and chief governance officer for our Unitarian Universalist Association from 2003 to 2013, in which time she not only presided over the business of our association, but in ways that I am deeply grateful, guided and led our public witness. It's been a real joy to be a companion on this journey with you, Gini, and to call you my friend. We're really honored to have you here after 4 years now, when Gini was present at my installation and gave that spirited, and may I say, kick ass. Well, this is PG-13. Kick-ass charge to the congregation. welcome. Whoa, it's me.
Must be, it's not me. Thanks, Ahbi.
A warm welcome to Gini von Coder.
Good morning, friends.
Morning.
My wife and I have a habit of the heart. We preface each meal with a shared moment of quiet gratitude. Whether we are sitting at home, whether we're even together, we eat meals on FaceTime sometimes, or we're with a group of people, whoever's gathered, we hold hands, and each person at the table is encouraged to reflect silently on 3 things for which they are grateful. Earlier this year, by the way, I chose to also begin my days this same way. I will not put my feet on the floor until I have begun by counting the good. And it's kind of cool to have progressives doing devotions in public at Cracker Barrel, so I encourage you to give this a go. I usually don't share these with people, but I will today. This morning I woke up grateful for my wife, who loves me fiercely and allows me to return her affection. I am grateful for my friends, the Janamanchis, in my life, for Ahbi and Lalitha, for Abhimanyu, do I know how to say your name? For Adobe, for Abhimanyu and Yashasvi, and I am grateful for Autumn today. So in this spirit, please join me briefly for a shared moment of quiet gratitude. This morning's sermon starts with a poem from the Reverend Nancy Schaefer and then continues without pause into a pre-flight boarding announcement. While you may be startled, I want to make sure you're not confused. Nancy Schaefer writes, "What has to happen for enough to be enough?" Meaning possessions and money, opportunities and status. What must occur before plenty will suffice? Profound loss can be helpful, noticing an end to possible days. Also, the disappearance of a land you loved or a part of yourself. An arm will do. Sometimes you can enter plenty apart from a desert before. Perhaps you know how to be filled with a single lupin, even when an entire field of purple spreads, even when ocean splashes below. You know something about pausing, though 100 reasons call at you to notice them. Somewhere you learned stillness, how both the middle of the night and the hot sun of day are still and you in them. You learned to think quietly in both. Also, someone probably loved you in a way you understand as always. You saw him looking at you once with eyes both glad and 300 years old. You looked back, equally glad and old. Or you counted the number of continents and names of countries, lists of languages spoken now and once, and could only decide for proportion. You noticed what your grandfather saved, or your neighbor. You believed Jesus wasn't kidding, nor the Buddha. The ways are myriad. The beginning of plenty is this. You exchange things for qualities. You wake counting the good. You brush against holding and know it. Please direct your attention to the front of the cabin. This airline is totally employee-owned and operated. We care about each passenger, but care particularly and specifically about you. You know who you are. There are plenty of seats available in the first class section, even now. It's not too late. Our flight begins today with a journey already in progress. Therefore, this smaller offering, mini announcements for this portion of our journey. There are 2 emergency exits on this aircraft. 2. In case of an emergency, you will use neither of them. The nearest exits, both of them, are behind you, and it is far too late to go back. You can grab a parachute and leave. Some have tried, But they did not really go back because we cannot go back, cannot step in the same river twice. Thomas Wolfe, you can't go home again, not really, not ever. We must build the home we need together. This is the essence of our companionship, to dream together wide awake of the home that we need. Out of wood and stone, out of dreams and sacrifice, the people build a home. Out of the work of their hands and hearts and minds, the people fashion a symbol and a reality. We use words like these to dedicate church buildings, but the home I speak of is something more. Home of the soul, casa del spiritu, casa del corazon, home of aspiration, home of humanity, earth made fair and all her people one. If we are ever to have this home, we must first dream it and then create it, knowing like Moses that we may trudge for years in the wilderness and despite countless weary miles, never actually arrive in the promised land. I had heard that Miriam asked to stop for directions, but Aaron insisted that they weren't really lost. But I wonder, what would it be like to never arrive? What would it be like to be those people, that person who works for the promised land and never sets foot in it? Because we know this happens. The dream becomes the dream deferred, the dream denied for so many. There was a time when strangers were welcome here. Now we are encouraged to fear neighbors, both near and far. Our environment, already teetering on the edge of catastrophe, is again placed on the chopping block. And don't even talk to me about elephants or bear cubs. One step forward, 50 steps back. We watch in horror as the infrastructure that raised people from poverty and created a middle class, leveled the playing field imperfectly but leveled it for many, has been thrown on the trash heap of history, discarded atop the wreckage of civility, of duty, of even simple honesty. Perhaps the question has been answered. Nothing is sacred. Adrian Rich wrote, "My heart is moved by all I cannot save. So much has been destroyed. I have to cast my lot with those who age after age, perversely, with no extraordinary power, reconstitute the world." This is our work. If we are to have a real home, a worthy home is not behind us. It is clearly not where we are now. It is time to pack, for we must journey. This is not wandering I speak of. This is purposeful striving toward, moving toward, working together for a better dwelling place, betting our hearts and souls and those of future generations on the chance that safe harbor can be found and a new home created. Look around, pilgrims. We are not accidental tourists, but faithful travelers homeward bound, companions on a pilgrimage of noble purpose. Each day, more and more of us accept, more and more of us come to know that there is no greater mission, personal or communal, than summoning companions of stalwart heart, resilience, and commitment, and journeying step by step together. Annie Dillard wrote, "It is madness to wear ladies' straw hats and velvet hats to church. We should all be wearing crash helmets. Ushers should issue life preservers and signal flares. They should lash us to the pews, for the sleeping God may wake someday and take offense, or the waking God may draw us out to where we can never return." Annie's way of saying, good chance of turbulence, stay in your seats, fasten your seatbelts. And please do not obsess about oxygen masks or remembering, because God knows it would be impossible in the moment to put on your own mask before assisting your oxygen-deprived loved ones nearby. Don't worry, there are no masks. Look up. There's not even an illusion of oxygen masks. For years, we journeyed comfortably with illusions in place. I had illusions, let me name some for you. Marriage equality signaled a new day for the queer community. Equal opportunity, gender equity, an end to misogyny, decades of relative prosperity, binge watching 8 seasons of West Wing, retirement pension funds, 8 years of a truly good human being in the White House, a portfolio diversified to ensure that even though past performance cannot guarantee future returns, I'd be in pretty good shape unless, of course, the entire financial sector contributed to a total breakdown of the economy. Could that ever happen? When we remove the rules, can it happen again? Nancy Schaefer writes, you ask, what has to happen for enough to be enough? Meaning possessions and money, opportunities and status. What must occur before plenty will suffice? Profound loss can be helpful, noticing an end to possible days. Also, the disappearance of a land you loved or a part of yourself. An arm will do. I have been disappointed, and yet I dare not despair, so here's what I've decided. If there's really no backup oxygen in the ceiling, it's just plain wrong to provide the illusion that there are oxygen masks. And if there's no safety net, you and I need to find a different kind of safety. Safety in numbers, safety in compassion, safety in community. If there is a loss of cabin pressure, we will simply have to teach each other to breathe thinner air. Because there is no service on this flight save the service we provide one to another. When Jesus heard that John the Baptist had been slain, he borrowed a boat and crossed the lake, ended up at the village of Beth Shaid, Hebrew for house of fishing, to mourn in private. Others followed, scores, hundreds, 1,000. Jesus had chosen this solitary place to grieve, and yet they came on foot from nearby towns. Grieving cousin he might be, but still teacher, still rabbi to the many. Some came in solidarity. Some came to be healed. Maybe it would take his mind off of things. Some were not even sure why they came. Perhaps they too were looking for a home. All afternoon they kept arriving until there were easily 5,000 men plus uncounted women and children. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John all counting, and none of them count the women and children. At least they were consistent. The disciples tried to manage this situation, suggest sending the crowd home or at least directing them to nearby towns to get food before it is too late for a meal, before innkeepers roll up the sidewalks, shutter the cafes. Perhaps the disciples are afraid. Hungry people can be unkind. Hungry crowds can be dangerous. Jesus says, there is no need for them to leave. Just give them something to eat. The disciples reply sympathetically. Their teacher is grieving. Maybe he hasn't noticed. Master, we don't have enough food. Have you seen how many people there are? Jesus replies, just give them what we have. The disciples are now beyond sympathy. We can't feed this crowd. We have 5 loaves of bread and 2 fishes. So much for house of fishing. Perhaps they are afraid. The events of the past week, how quickly, how capriciously John became a non-prophet. In times like these, anything different can be frightening. Even good news is held up to the light and examined for character flaws. If the disciples were afraid, friends, surely we can understand their fear. We can't feed these people, teacher. We have 5 loaves of bread and 2 small fishes. All 4 Gospels agree on what happens next, and that doesn't happen often. Jesus blesses the food, splits it up, and sends it out into the crowd. And miraculously, there is enough for all. And I can see it happening. Attend this story, for we are all disciples now. Illusion stripped away, because no matter what we are trying to serve, food, housing, resilience, hope, basic civility, there are too many to feed and we have too little. So many struggling to make ends meet. Attend this story, friends, because this is our miracle too. The baskets make their way into the crowd. A young mother receives a small, nearly empty basket. She looks inside. Only a crust of bread and a fish head. She reaches into her cloak and adds more bread to the basket and a few figs. It's not like she would set out from home with 3 small children in tow and no snacks. But she knows not everyone had food to bring. She knows this. How could she not know? An elderly man nearby adds some salted fish that he'd saved to eat on his walk home. He moves more slowly than he did in his younger days, and it will be a long, long walk. But he notices some children in the crowd who are hungry and tired and crying. How could he not notice? And this is not the first night he will miss dinner. It's just one of many. The baskets move through the crowd, moments of attentiveness, moments of transcendent awareness, followed by moments of deep generosity. Fathers and mothers, grandfathers and cousins, relatives thrice removed, those with 6 degrees of separation from Pontius Pilate, even people who believed they knew no one else in the crowd. Remember what their grandfather saved, what Jesus had said. Exchange things for qualities, and miraculously, there is plenty. All are fed, even those who choose to remain hungry. Contrary to what the Gospels say, not all miracles were performed. Some were simply lived. And so we journey together, dreaming of a better world, trying to exchange the illusion of safety that things provide for precious qualities, attentiveness, compassionate action, lives well lived, stalwart companionship, grateful hearts and generous spirits. And we exchange the illusion of safety that things provide for this journey, for this struggle, for this community. There is no service on this flight, save the service that we provide. But if we are honest and true companions, one to the other and to the many others, one people, one tribe, it will be enough. So sit back, fasten your seatbelt, metal tip goes into the buckle, seat back upright and locked, that most uncomfortable position, stow your tray tables, personal items go completely underneath the seat in front of you, and if it's got an on-off switch, turn it off now. I almost forgot, one more thing. Hand-holding is strongly encouraged.
Wow. Thank you, Gini, for reminding us through Nancy Schaefer's words what has to happen when enough is enough. What has to happen when plenty is sufficient. I'm reminded, as you were speaking, of Albert Schweitzer's words that I think applies really well, especially to us Unitarian Universalists. He put it very simply. He said, good fortune obligates. And another prophet, Universalist theologian Clarence Skinner, put it this way, in a little bit more edgy way. He said, a stuffed prophet sees no visions. So thank you for pushing us to get to that place, not only of gratitude, but to move from that place of gratitude to give of ourselves more abundantly, to bless this world. And in that spirit, we now give and receive an offering to sustain the work and ministry of Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church, and today to support the relief efforts that are ongoing in Puerto Rico through the Hurricane Maria Recovery Fund. So I invite each and all of us to dig deep and give generously to support this much needed effort. Our offering will now be given and gratefully received. Thank you for for your generosity.
With gratitude for the gifts we have received, for the gifts that we are, and for the compassion and love made manifest by these gestures of faith, may we be truly grateful. Please rise in body and or in spirit to sing We Give Thanks, number 1010 in the Teal hymnal.
And we'd like to sing this in 3 verses, not just one, replacing the first 4 words with the second and third verses. So we'll sing, Oh, we give thanks, and then, Oh, we give joy, and then we give love. Jasmine?
Please remain as you are for these words of benediction from our colleague, the Reverend Naomi King. Let us join hands and hearts in gratitude on this wondrous day,
where we have the abundance of our lives before us.
We remember this day of bounty all of those
who do not have enough, who are afraid,
who are lonely and who suffer,
We wish for the abundance of this world to be shared,
for fear to become love, for the lonely to feel welcome,
and for the suffering to know rest and joy.
for the labors, the love, the care that gave
The
us,
delights of this and every day, we say thanks.
for the nourishment of our spirit, the challenges that strengthen us,
and the friends we have on this journey, we sing thanks.
for all that is our lives, for these good gifts,
We whisper thanks.
overflowing with gratitude, let us shout thanks. Go in peace, go making peace, live gently, love fiercely, and bow to the mystery. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving and enjoy this postlude.